What's up guys, SkyKevin here, and today we're going to talk about the recent explosives patch for Last Oasis. This is information as of making this video in February 2021, and we'll go through the changes they've made, what works and what doesn't, as well as my thoughts on any improvements or fixes they've missed along the way. So, let's get started. The patch notes begin with the most heated issue being, of course, suicide dinghies, and how explosives are used in Last Oasis. It goes over the initial intentions of explosives, as well as the limits they've now placed to the mechanic. Essentially, they nerfed the overall damage that floating mines will do when exploding in a container by tenfold, as well as added an animation effect to signal when some explosives are about to go off. They increased the time it takes for an explosive to go off, and along with that, they reintroduced the hose station, which would be able to extinguish these fires in ignited containers. Gameplay. Poaching huts are now traceable on a map, but only for the individual or clan the huts belong to. In order to track another poaching hut, you need to find one of them on the map, and there will be an option to track the other ones that clan may own. This is to stop one clan from spamming many huts all over a single tile, but still allow small groups to have one or two of them hanging around. With ignition mechanics, now you can use bombs such as sulfur, green gas, or chalk bombs, so if you put 5 of them in a chest, they will all go off when that chest has ignited. What's really cool about this is that you can even stack different types of bombs to have them all go off at the same time and mix together. They don't get any special effects, but you might be able to make some deadly combinations. Keep in mind with these bombs, they can be ignited if dropped in a bag on the ground as well, so I'd be interested to see some really cool effects from this coming out of the woodwork, especially as the meta changes. Finally, another small change was to gas clouds, which made them turn into a status effect, which is applied to the player. This means that the damage no longer stacks with multiple fired in a single location. The grappling hook mechanic has also changed slightly, as now if you are hit by a melee attack, the grapple will detach. Throwing weapons can be equipped in both weapon slots now, and they added a player combat cooldown, so that if a player is attacked by another, they simply can't press L to log out of the zone instantly when they're on the edge of the grid. Now, if you decide to take a fight near the off-map lobby, be prepared to completely fight it out. Trading stations. They fixed some issues with quest generation, some text options, and fixed a bug where some downed players would become lootable while dueling. Balance. Now, all items inside obsidian canisters and pots can be ignited, all kinds of firebolts can now be ignited, and as mentioned earlier, floating mines' explosive damage was reduced by quite a lot. The nerf to floating mines was to be expected, and I think the ability to burn firebolts in containers will be an interesting change. I think the direction they're planning to go with these ignition sources is to add a risk of leaving ammo in chests on your walker. If any kind of fire happens to hit those boxes, the explosion will set off other types of ammo inside, dealing instant damage to many players around you, and don't forget, turn all the other contents of that container to ash. Lastly, there was a rebalance to the Firestone Khopesh and Basswood armor as expected. Basswood had its reduction go from -13 to -8, and the Khopesh had penetration reduced from 32% to 21%. I think that they reduced the overall damage across the board as well. This is something I brought up in my previous State of LO video, so glad to see that they've made these changes. Structures and bases. Now, players don't instantly jump onto a turret, it will turn to them first, and then allow you to mount the station. This will definitely help with ballista getting stuck facing the wrong direction, but keep in mind, battle fans will take a very long time to turn around if you're boarding it from the wrong side. Scattershot guns now need support for a player to fully turn it on a walker, meaning like a ballista, if you're manning it and hanging off the edge, it will kick you off the turret. Remote ballistas and exosuit aimers have also been fixed, along with scattershot aimers as well. I'm super happy about this because I love using the remote ballista on a small walker in these fights, given you can basically fire 2 ballistas at once. Another great change is the battle fan now needs to be in the line of sight for the flamethrower option to work. Yes, this means that now you won't get torched through walkers, structures, or other environmental objects, which quite frankly is fantastic to hear and was something that I think everyone really anticipated this patch. It'll still be useful, but only for very specific situations. Iron ingots can now be placed in the lumber mill to make reinforced planks as they weren't able to be placed inside before. This is another great change to avoid having to use the fabricator for when you're making your planks. They increased how far away you can build the large walls from your character to stop some frustration with building them. Defensive towers were also added to the game. However, they are still not fixed and not buildable just yet. They fixed the incorrect rotation on one of the exosuit arms. The crane and kite now have proper building checks, so they can't be meshed when placed down. When unpacking structures, they added the same radius as a structure already sitting there, so you can't unpack 2 structures at the same time to have them touching the same building radius between them. Furnaces are now locked until they take 50% of their damage, the same as all other crafting stations. They made the snaps for barrier bases and planks a little less glitchy, and they added more spawn positions on beds. They overall fixed the kite, so now, when wingsuiting off of it, you still don't have the same momentum as your walker, making you fly around in uncontrollable and random directions. Hopefully we can see some playability by walkers using these for a new boarding meta. Walker climbers have new building checks as well, so make sure that you don't move any existing walker climbers, as they may not go back down again in the same spot. They changed the recipe cost of barrier planks, gates, and bases, making them cost a ton more redwood, and making any clan that had these spammed on their tile before the update a very easy resource to get by disassembling their old spam for thousands of redwood, stone, and rope. They lowered the tool pod interaction distance, and they fixed items being transferred through walls by dropping a bag nearby. Now, if you're trapped in a base, all those resources should stay safe inside if there are no open windows or doors. If you die in the base as well, your body should not fly to the top of the base as it did before. Walkers and travel. Probably one of the most significant content pieces of this update was a whole new equipment selection interface that has been added to walkers, so now you can choose what to wear when you spawn in. Keep in mind that you still can't spawn in with bandages in your inventory yet. Hopefully the devs will add that feature soon enough. Now, when you zone into a tile, if the bubble your walker spawns in doesn't pop, then it will transfer everyone and the walker back into the lobby. So if you try to spawn in and your power goes out, or you have trouble connecting or your game crashes, your walker will end up safe in the lobby as long as the bubble isn't broken. There was also a bug previously where you would zone in and the waitlist modules on your walker wouldn't work. That has now been fixed as well. They fixed flags being placed on fireflies and dinghies and being able to push other things in the game as if they're waitlist. This is great because before you would have a falco or buffalo walker being effortlessly moved across the tile by a firefly with a couple of flags sitting on top of it. Another great change is players can no longer build nearby an enemy proxy walker. Keep in mind, your clan still can build their own defenses around the proxy. I think this is great because, as I suggested in my last video, to stop people from aggressively building a stone base to attack your proxy by spamming foundations directly beside it, this is a great countermeasure to doing that. There is still the issue of things like catapult bases, which can be made nearby but further enough away, but this is definitely a good first step. They also modified falco wings, so you can't stand underneath them to damage them with a melee weapon without being exposed. Another annoying thing that has now been fixed is that walker parts that fall off a dead walker, such as the wings and legs, now will despawn in 3 minutes instead of 30. This was a common problem where your walker would get stuck inside the enemy's leg or wing piece as it was falling to the ground. It still is an issue and you can still get stuck in it, but at least you have a chance of surviving for the 3 minutes before it disappears and then can move once again. Another few small changes were things like stiletto LODs, which were changed so you shouldn't be able to see them as clearly from far away. Construction supports for a walker should disappear after an hour. The Hornet walker now shows wing power in the tech tree. They fixed this for the Blang as well. And the Hercule walker now has the proper name for walker levels. Now, if a proxy walker is damaged, the water will unlock when it's under 50%. The Mollusk walker's medium wings will no longer look super buggy when they're retracted. The Titan walker was buffed, so now it's a little faster, more turning radius, and can hold more water. Granted, I hope that they would add a little bit more to the health of the legs and other parts so that it compares better with the Domus walker as the top of the line battle walker, especially considering the tablet cost. I think the Titan still needs a few more buffs, especially when it comes to the low speed compared to the other walkers. Not to mention the fact that a Domus walker can have a driver completely encased, whereas on a Titan, the driver is pretty much in the wide open. Lastly, they also fixed the leg animations that were not playing when walkers would be moving at a low speed. Oasis and points of interest. Some of the changes to this include them changing the eclipse time from 10 minutes to 3 minutes. This feels more like a minute and a half because you can still partly see at the beginning and end of the eclipse. It's definitely a great change because it's just enough time to influence the course of a battle, but not enough to make it stagnate while both sides sit there in the dark. Some other things are old loot sites in the cradle have been updated. Loot crates are now easier to see via some LOD changes. They fixed some weird spiky terrain on some of the maps, as well as some other small changes to the flow of the terrain. And now Rupu camps submerge instead of exploding violently when they go out of render range. Mobs. There's not much to this, but they fixed killins, so now they attack when you go near them and rip your walker's wings off. And now attacking a Rupu should interrupt their taunt and make them attack you back. But we'll talk a little bit about this later at the end. Visuals. They updated the explosions and fire effects and added a constant light source for things like cooking pots. Now they can't be turned off, so if you have one on your walker and you're in the dark, it's always going to be visible. They also added a new asset for the advanced hatchet, and although the icon is the same, the in-game item looks very different. And finally, they fixed some of the other parts of explosions, like camera shakes and the resolution of the explosion. Sounds. There were only 2 changes with this. They added sound to heavy walkers, so they're a lot less sneaky, and they added explosion sounds to explosions. Interface and text. Gathering pouches now gather resources directly into the pouches themselves. They added a confirmation message for kicking clan members or choosing to leave the clan yourself. They fixed the Discord logs integration. Clan names and clan colors are now much more visible. Some typos in the descriptions have also been fixed. And they revamped all the icons on the respawn menu and changed it so when spawning you can actually see where the bed or walker you're spawning in on is located on the map. Another good change was when you open your map up on the edge of the tile, it no longer goes straight to the world map. It's not really that big of a deal, but it was intuitively quite annoying anytime you were on the edge of the tile and trying to look at your local map. Another few small changes were the wingsuit open and close key can now be rebound. They changed the icons for vitamins, and the interactable distance for downed players has been decreased. Fixes and improvements. Players shouldn't become invisible in manned weapons sometimes anymore. They fixed some crashes, and players no longer should get stuck in the block action when throwing firebombs. They improved the queue when players are taking too long to connect, so it shouldn't kick you out anymore. And there shouldn't be any way to climb while blocking. On that note, there's also been some new climbing and vaulting animations added as well. Lastly, the same as pretty much every other patch, walkers and their parts have also been optimized even further to increase server performance. The last thing they did is leave us with this teaser image that looks to be similar to one of the destroyed walkers or trade stations you might find at a point of interest. My guess is that may have something to do with new variations of fragment runes that may come with a new map on Xbox release. But we'll find out in the coming weeks or months when that happens. Overall, this update was a much needed one. It did a great job of fixing many of the balance problems with things like suicide dinghies and flame fans. I was hoping for a bit more content given there hasn't been much of a change for all of January, but there were a lot of things fixed. That being said, a lot of new bugs got introduced. Some Rupu camps have been broken, so now they just don't attack at all. Quality is now completely mislabeled, so there's essentially no quality farming in the game. I'm still getting stuck floating in the air when I use a grapple climber. I've heard of the ability to teleport through walls while climbing, and climbing onto ballistas will sometimes rocket you into the sky. A few others were supposedly using a host station on lava can crash the server, and there's a desync issue where when you connect to the game, you constantly fall through the ground. I'm sure there's even more bugs that I'm not stating here, but I think what this shows is it's probably a good idea to release these types of balance patches on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, so these types of bugs can be addressed quickly and without issue. I don't blame the developers for these new bugs being introduced into the game as they're trying to create it. Debugging is just a part of how you make it, but you do need to have time to let the player base test this kind of content, especially while it's in early access and you have that excuse. It has been confirmed that we're going to have a content update when the Xbox release happens. Now we don't know when that is yet, but I would speculate that it is going to happen within the next couple of weeks, given they probably already have a lot of the content part done, and now they're just trying to finalize up everything and get Xbox to release before they release all the extra content as well. When they do, it's very likely that they're going to introduce another wipe, and look forward to having a complete reset to the player base when that happens. I'm personally very excited to see some more content. Hopefully it comes soon within the next couple of weeks, and chances are they're not going to announce the wipe until at least a week before it's going to happen. Otherwise, it would pretty much kill the game population that's currently there. So make sure to look out for it in the coming weeks, because there's going to be a lot more returning players and a lot more content to be had. As always, I'm making more videos on Last Oasis and other MMOs, so don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I know this is basically a summary of the patch notes, but hopefully my input can help contextualize some of the things that were stated here that might not be as clear. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.